Shedim and Machshava and Halacha Part 2. All right. So let us bring ourselves up to date to what we are up to. Point number one: we've established that there is a dispute among the Rishonim whether Shedim exist or not. But what is clear is that the Gemara derives their existence from psukim in the Torah, primarily the pasuk of Lo Yizbechu Od Lo Yizbechu Od Lasi'irim Asher Hem Zonim Achareihem Lo Yizbechu Od Esidchehem Lasi'irim. The Gemara says that refers to offering sacrifices to Shedim. And there are many places in the Gemara that discuss demonology, discuss the whole concept of Shedim. But there are also Gemaras that discuss Kshafim, and the Rambam puts those two in the same category. And he says that just as Kishuf is mere superstition that does not have any real power, so too Shedim is a superstitious fabrication, and they don't really exist. Well, this, of course, is contested greatly by the non-rationalist school of Rishonim that are living around the same time as the Rambam and are sometimes even reactionary to the Rambam, who emphasize the existence of Shedim. We also found that the term Ruach Ra'ah, an evil spirit that is found both in the Gemara and in Piskei Shulchan Aruch, refers to an evil spirit that is a result of Shedim. And therefore, for example, if a person wakes up in the morning and we say that a Ruach Ra'ah is Shora al Etzba'osav, that an evil spirit rests upon his fingers, that evil spirit is another term for Shedim, for demonic forces or demons. The Gemara describes more extensively that we didn't look into this last time. The Gemara describes even what Shedim look like, and we had a little bit of a description of that last week. But they are invisible because they're made out of 2 out of the 4 elements, the most ethereal, namely air and fire. We also learned a very important Gemara that says that over the course of time, some of our great sages were able to have dominion over the Shedim and banish them into places that are not considered to be the Yishuv, into places which are not inhabited by large populations. And it's for that reason that many poskim say that those things that used to be of great concern because of Shedim are no longer of great concern. And so therefore we saw, just as an example in our discussion of one particular halacha, we saw a discussion of leaving food under one's bed. The Gemara has said that a Ruach Ra'ah, an evil spirit, rests upon food that is left under one's bed. But the poskim say, both the Mishnah Berurah and it seems like the Aruch HaShulchan as well, both paskin that nowadays, because the Shedim are not as powerful as they used to be since they've been banished, or a certain kind of Shed has been banished, that's only lechatchila. But b'diavad, if a person left food under his bed overnight, or if a person touched food when there was a Ruach Ra'ah on his fingers before he did the Negel Vas, or before he washed his hands in the morning, b'diavad, everything is fine. It's only a lechatchila dikazir. And so what we're left with is a little bit of vagueness as to what we're supposed to make of these Shedim. We have a machlokas whether they even exist to begin with, and it's clear from the Shulchan Aruch that the Shulchan Aruch contends with them as a reality, but even in their sense of reality, they only have so much harm that they can do bisman hazeh because of the weakened state or the banished state of Shedim in the world today. So there are 2 more things that I wanted us to look at tonight, just to get a little bit more comprehensiveness on our understanding of Shedim. The 2 things that I wanted us to look at tonight are 3 sections from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, who talks about Shedim and is the basis for halachic practice today in many, many circles of Jews today. And for some, this is a very important halacha, even though it's not codified in Shulchan Aruch. But nevertheless, it is a well-known halacha, and it is considered to be just with the same binding force as anything in Shulchan Aruch. And then we'll see a couple of sections from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, and then I want to do a tshuva from the Radbaz, who was from the Migurashei Sfarad. He was from those who were exiled from Spain in 1492, made his way to Eretz Yisrael and later to Cairo, and was one of the great Gedolei HaPoskim of the early 16th century. So that's what I want to do. I want to see what his analysis, and through his analysis of Shedim and Halacha, we will have a very comprehensive review of Chazal's attitude towards Shedim as well. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit backwards in the handout. At the very end, we have 3 quotes from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid was the most prolific of all of the Chasidei Ashkenaz, at least as far as the literature that we have as a remnant from Chasidei Ashkenaz, who lived, Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid lives in the 12th century, and he's sort of like the complete counterpart to the Rambam. Whereas the Rambam was the ultimate rationalist, Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid in the 12th century is the ultimate Kabbalist or proto-Kabbalist of that particular century. And he has a very extensive discussion of Shedim. We'll look at source number 8, which is from the Tzava of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, and that's source number 8. And you may be even familiar with the halacha that he's quoting. The origin of this halacha is from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. It's not clear where he gets it from. It's not from the Gemara. So he writes as follows. This is when we talk about the Tzava of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, this was his last will and testament to the members of his family. And one of those things was Lo yistam adam chalono pesach legamre shelo yaziku hashedim. That if a person is doing renovations in his home, he may not seal off a window or a doorway completely, so that the Shedim do not injure him. Why? Ki darkan lotzeisbo, because a shade may have a regular pattern of going in and out of a particular window in your house, or a particular doorway in your house. And if you seal that window, the shade will get very irate, and he will bother you, he will pester you. And it may cause you damage. May cause you some form of damage. I remember a few years ago when one of my children became ill, Hasidic Yid said to me that I should check and see if I had done any renovations in the house recently, to find out maybe that was the reason, because it could be that the Shedim were responsible for that. And I appreciate it. I know that he wanted to help, but I figured that perhaps we should work on Torah, Tshuva, Tefillah, and Tzedakah first, and if that didn't work, then we would check and find out, look at the original floor plan plans of the house and find out if one of the windows had been sealed off. Okay. And we check the mezuzahs, right? Elayinkov boneket. So Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid says that what you should do, has anyone ever heard of this halacha, by the way? Familiar with this halacha? But instead, what you should do is, if you do seal off a window or a door, you have to drill a hole where that window used to be. It doesn't have to be a large one, it can be a tiny hole, but it has to go through completely to the outside of the house in order to allow the Shedim to go in and out. This is, and I want you to know that this is brought down in Halacha Sfarim. There's a wonderful 2-volume work called Shmiras HaGufa HaNefesh. It's been out for a number of years now. It is a wonderful piece of religious scholarship. Shmiras HaGufa HaNefesh. It's kedai to have it in your home. And there are a lot of practices that are brought down, especially from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, having to do with Shedim. And there's a whole chapter devoted to this halacha. And the question is raised, well, what if you knock down the house completely and you rebuild the house in its place? Do you have to make sure that the new walls that you put up have the same window and doorway configuration as the original house? And there's a whole bunch of different shuvas that are written on this very issue. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now in Sefer Chasidim, we'll take a look at 2 passages. One is from Siman Tov Samach Aleph, where he says, Yesh dvarim shehein kedarkei ha'emori, v'afal pichein mutter. There are certain things which have the appearance of doing that which the Amorites do, which are superstitious activities, that seem to be like the performance of the occult. However, they're still permitted. Kegon, Adam, sheshiber bayis yashan uvoneh bayis chadash ba'oso makom, that if a person knocks down a house and he's building a new house in its place, ocheder, or if he's renovating a room in the house, yesh lahadrim babayis, yesh lahadarim babayis lizaher shelo yeshanu hechadash min hayashan ba'pesachim uv'achalonos. Person should be very careful that he should retain the original configuration of the original house and not change the doorways and the windows. Don't change the original configuration. And if they change, it'll become mamish a sakana in their lifetime, a danger to their lives. Because of those who are appointed sort of to oversee that house. And this is all recorded in, and it could be either Shedim or Malachim, he says. And we're going to see that also the Rabbi also feels that Shedim and Malachim are two, even though we saw in Derech Hashem that these are two classifications of beings, nevertheless, they may not be distinguishable as far as their effects to mankind, and therefore you don't want to anger either class, either the angelic class or the demonic class, and therefore you have to be careful. So the Sefer HaKavod. This is all recorded in a book called Sefer HaKavod. I don't know what that Sefer is. It's probably some earlier work, maybe from the Gaonic period. I don't know. But this is what Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid brings down. Now, it seems apparent that when Shedim are given a certain place to dwell, sometimes they're confined and they can't move, they can't change their station. And as a result, if you seal off the window, you're really getting them really frustrated because they don't have the ability to go in their regular patterns of movement. That's the way you have to explain it. Otherwise, if I was a shade and someone blocked off my window space, I'd go find somewhere else to haunt, right? But it doesn't work that way. It's not like, Casper the Friendly Ghost. The Shedim have certain spots where they have been designated, they've been assigned, and they're not allowed to relocate themselves unless it's by divine decree. So by you sealing off a door or a window, you're confounding them and you're frustrating them. And the final thing from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid that we're going to see tonight is Simin Aleph Kuf Mem Vav. 1146 is the paragraph, and he writes as follows in source number 10. Adam shenizok, if a person is injured, and Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid doesn't say the nature of the injury, im yagid ma shera'a toch asara yamim sakana, that if he tells others what he saw to cause him the injury, in other words, if he had like a vision of some kind of demonic creature attacking him, he's not allowed to relate his vision because otherwise he'll come to a sakana, he'll endanger his life. Sheminyan shedim tes v'ta'asiha b'metatei hashemad. As the pasuk that alludes to them, shedim come in groups of 9. And so you have to wait 10 days before the shedim are all gone, I guess in the groups of 9, as is alluded to in the pasuk of V'ta'atasiha b'metatei hashemad, I will sweep her out with the destructive broom. And the word tate, because of so many tesses, is an allusion to shedim. U'malach hamaves keshabala'ir kilavim bochim. That when the angel of death comes to a city, that's when the dogs howl. L'chein kishemavrichin behemos min hadaleika chozrim el hadaleika kis yireim v'sovrim shemalei chavola bo'u le'ir. And therefore, you notice a pattern that when you chase animals out of a barn that's burning down, quite often the animals will return to the fire because they are fearful. They see certain destructive angels that have come to the city and they want to seek sanctuary from those angels, even if it means running into a burning barn. Okay. Velulei shebnei adam hayu magidim masharoim hayuroim devarim harbei kimo habehemos she'ein magidos. Now he says further, were it not for the fact that people have the capacity of speech so that they have the ability to share information of what they have seen with others. If a person didn't have the power of speech, they would be given more visionary powers to be able to see Shedim. The reason why Hashem doesn't allow us to see Shedim is because we're not permitted to share information about Shedim with others. And therefore, because we can communicate, we are deprived of the power to see those forces. Ki ha'ason ra'asa mashalo ra'a Bilam. And the proof to that is that Bilam's donkey saw more than he could see of angelic forces. V'lama lo nata hamalach l'tzad yamino l'smol o yifrach ba'avir. So now you can ask another question. Why, when the donkey was and Bilam were riding down the road, why didn't the angel just move to the side? Why couldn't the angel move to the right or to the left, or just fly up and levitate above the air, above the ground? So Sha'amar Kiyarata Derech Lenegdi Elamikan Shesakana Listam Chalanu Subsachim, and from here you see that you're not allowed to seal off windows or doors in a house. Lefishema Nigzar Lashedim She'en Lahem La'avor Ela Ba'oso Haderech, because it's very possible that a decree was placed upon an angel or a shade that they had to be confined to a certain place in this world, and it could be that that very place where your window is where the shade was confined to. Umatriach hashedim b'makom acher, lachein v'tilachetz regel bilam v'tilchatz regel bilam elakir. And by you forcing the shade and confining him by close sealing off the window, you're causing the shade to do something destructive, and which is alluded to in the story of Bilam, that's what caused Bilam to bang his leg against the wall, because his donkey moved aside because of the shade. And it banged Bilam, and so you see that's a classic example of a person getting injured because he's messing around and angering an angelic or celestial being. And that's also why the angel in the middle of the road couldn't move. He says, Ich bin da, this is my spot. It's my makom kavua. And I can't move, I have to be here. And therefore, you have to move to the side. How do you know that Shedim can only go in a place that was pre-allotted to them? We have an example of this in Chulin, which talks about a shade that was breaking barrels because its station was to be underneath the gutter, where the barrel was collecting the gutter water, and the shade didn't have the ability to move aside, so he had to burst the barrel. And it also says in Maseches Psachim that Shedim are confined to the side of a Rishus Harabim, the less tread areas of a public thoroughfare. The Lachein. And therefore he writes, Kisha Adam mispached, if a person is filled with fear for seemingly no reason, all of a sudden, Pa'amim shehu nichnas l'makom drisas raglei hashed. Sometimes it's because you've just stumbled into the space of a shade and you don't even realize it. So you bumped into a shade. You don't see it, you don't feel it, but something about in your psyche, in your subconscious, is experiencing an encounter with a shade, and that's what's causing you to be frightened. And the Gemara says, what should you do to escape a shade? Move aside, or if you're filled with pachad, as the Gemara in Megillah says, you should move aside 4 amos. B'teida shehu kidavarai, shelifamim kisharoa hakelev malach hamavis kenegdo, ein rashai hakelev aleches b'darko, ki im chozer al zanavo, ad she'over midrisas hamalach hamavis. He says, the proof of this is that sometimes you'll see a dog, and all of a sudden it's walking straight, and then it bumps into the malach hamavis, and instead of continuing walking straight, the dog starts chasing its tail. That's a sign that the Malach HaMavis is nearby. The dog had to sort of slowly, had to stop in mid tracks, and had to start chasing its tail in order to wait for the Malach HaMavis to pass, and then the dog can resume its original path. And furthermore, if you force the dog, you pull the dog on the leash, say, come on, stop chasing your tail. Sometimes both you and the dog could die because you'll be bumping into the Malach HaMavis. This is what he says. Yaakov ben Dodi nisa shedachat hakelev umeis hakelev miyad. Yaakov ben Dodi, this must be Yaakov ben Dodi, probably his nephew, or his cousin, is really what it is. My cousin Yaakov tried this. He pushed the dog after it started chasing its tail, and the dog died. So he's giving you a ma'aseh shaya. And he says, but you should know that it's not such a terrible thing that the dog dies. If the dog dies, it's actually sort of a surrogate sacrifice because the Malach HaMavis may have been coming after you. So by giving him your dog instead, you end up saving your life. He says, Kamo ha'asam shel bilam shenichnasa legavul hamalach v'haraga hamalach. And this is the same thing that happened to Bilam. Instead of Bilam getting killed by the malach in the road, the malach instead killed the donkey. Shenamar ki ata gamoscha harakti ve'osahecha yesi. That the malach said, you know what, I should have really killed you, Bilam, and let the donkey live, but instead I exchanged life for life. V'haisa lekapar leBilam. This was an atonement for Bilam. Melame shehechia osa. So you see that the donkey's death was responsible for Bilam's survival. Ki keshenishlach hamalach lahamis ha'adam im yamus ben gilo yinatzel hai shehaylo lamus. And furthermore, many times the Malach HaMavis will be sent, and instead of claiming the original person that was sent, that the Malach HaMavis was sent to claim his life, another person will die instead, and that person's death will save the original person from being claimed by the Malach HaMavis. It's so you see that this is common in not only Christian and other forms of mythology, but Rabbi Yehuda Chassid is very familiar with this theme that you just thought you saw on your Hallmark channel, right? But in other words, this is a story that you could find in Rabbi Yehuda Chassid as well. Kemiria Magdala Nashya Ashmadai Kapid Aman Deshasi Zugi Shaomerim Haya Adam Yachal Lishtos Kol Masha Ba'olam Lo Shalo Haya Nishar Ba'olam Klum Haya Oseh. That there's a story about Miriam Magdala Nashya. That there was a story about Miriam Magdalene, who was the woman who was claims to be either the mother or the wife of Yashka in the Gemara. I don't know what he's referring to specifically. We just recently had a story in the Daf Yomi and Shabbos about Mary Magdalene, but I don't know what he's referring to here. And furthermore, he says, Ashmadai, who is the king of the Shedim, it's recorded in the Gemara in Gittin, he once kidnapped Shlomo HaMelech, the Gemara says, and he masqueraded as Shlomo for an extended period of time until Shlomo was able to break free and recapture Ashmadai. And the Gemara says that a person should not engage in zugos, which is doing things in pairs, like drinking 2 cups of wine at a time, and that is because that will invoke the presence of a shade. And Ashmadai said that if he could drink everything in the world, he would do so, and would leave over nothing for man. Umitam zeh sheda da aniyos kapid al hapsisin v'haperurin hanidoshin baraglei b'nei adam. And that is the reason why the Gemara says that a person should not leave crumbs on his table. That's another Gemara that we saw recently. I think we saw in the Gemara in Shabbos, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason for that is also because of a ruach ra'ah that rests on the crumbs. If you notice, there are some people, Chasidim v'anshe ma'aseh, have a minhag to scrape the crumbs after they cut the challah. They scrape the crumbs off the table. So why do we do that? So the Gemara says that if you leave crumbs on the table, that's a portent for anius, for poverty. So the question is, what does that mean? How does poverty come just because you leave crumbs on the table? So Rabbi Yehuda Chassid explains that there's a certain shade who is in charge of poverty, in charge of bringing poverty to individuals. And by leaving crumbs on the table, you get that shade upset. And you get him to sort of zap you with the poverty curse. And the reason is because if you let crumbs fall to the floor and people step on those crumbs, Sheomer achar shmile kreso dorech beraglav mashenishar mipiv. That the shade gets upset and he says, this person has too much. He's filled his belly and then lets the rest, the crumbs, fall to the floor. And therefore the shade says that this person is a very destructive person and would destroy everything in the world, and therefore the demon punishes, I think that's what he means, the demon punishes that person by depriving him of whatever wealth that he has. Okay, so this is really far out stuff. I don't mean to be irreverent in any way. If I'm coming across as irreverent, I don't mean that at all. We have to be somewhat agnostic about all of this stuff. The things that things went on back then that may have caused us, had we been living back then, we may have come to the same conclusions. And I can't tell you that, if a person subscribes to the Rambam and he says, I don't believe in Shedim, I say, fine. You don't believe in Shedim, good. You have someone very big on your shoulders that will support you, the Rambam will support you. But the truth of the matter is that if we look at the preponderance of literature in Chazal and in the Rishonim, we find much more literature that supports the existence of Shedim than we find literature that denies the existence of Shedim. And it's not, you can't really say that Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid would ever subscribe to the Rambam and say that this is mere superstition, because as you see, these are real things for him. These are real entities for Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid.
I think what's interesting is that in terms of, even in this one paragraph, he seems to flow very freely between Shedim, Malach HaMavos, Malach Hashem, because I think that's the reference there by Bilam. So it's all seems to blend together.
All different classes of spiritual beings that are creations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they serve a purpose. And just don't mess with them. Don't provoke them.
So would the Rambam also, or does the Rambam also argue against the existence of Malachim, which are specifically mentioned in the Torah? Yeah.
He can't deny them. They exist. Whether or not the Rambam would agree that human beings can interface with Malachim, now that's an interesting question. And I don't have a clear answer. I'd have to go through some sections in Moreh Nevuchim to really get some clarity on that. But that they exist in a celestial realm, that for sure. The Rambam said Kedusha every day, I'm sure. Right? I'm sure the Rambam believed in Malachim. The question for the Rambam is, what is the distance between the transcendent realm and the physical realm? That was his big issue. And therefore he had a difficulty with believing in things that are not confined within the physical realm that we could potentially interface with. Okay. Now, there's a number of Gemaras that you have in your sources, but we're going to skip all of those Gemaras. We're just going to go to source number 7, which is a tshuva from the Radbaz, Chela Gimel Siman Taf Hey. And you'll see that I just quote the Gemaras that the Radbaz quotes as a convenience, because we'll get clarity in all of these Gemaras that the Radbaz quotes for us. So we'll learn the Gemaras through learning the tshuva. And the tshuva of the Radbaz itself is fascinating because it sheds light on what some of the practices of the time were. Listen to the she'ela. She'ela, Yilamdenu Rabbeinu, al inyan ha-she'ela b'shedim. Eze derech mutar ve'eze derech asur. When is it permitted to seek out a demon for aid? And when is it asur? Gam ki rabim partsu gidra shel Torah u'mekachim l'shedim. There are people in my time, the questioner says to the Radbaz, that are violating a very important Torah principle, and they are actually offering incense to Shedim. V'omim she'en kavanasim la'avdam, and they say, our intention is not to worship these demons, adarabba lachuf osam ulahachricham la'asos ritzonam. But our objective is to harness and force these demons to do our bidding for us. Is it permitted to do such a thing? Now, to me, that sounds like witchcraft, right? And you would say, well, it's a kishuf, the Torah asur is kishuf. Well, let's see how the Radbaz approaches this. Yesh bazeh tzad heter, kishamati ki kitru l'shed b'fnei echad migedolei hador v'lo micha biyadam. The Radbaz is from the Megorashei Safarat. He was exiled from Spain in 1492 with the Jewish community, ended up in Eretz Yisrael, then went to Cairo, was the rabbi of Cairo for a number of years, and then ended up back in Eretz Yisrael before he died. So it's the early 1500s, exactly. He's born in the 1470s. So he's, okay. So here's the response of the Radbaz to this person. He said, the questioner says to him that I've heard that one of the Gedolei Hador was part of a ceremony or was witness to a ceremony of someone offering incense to a shade and didn't protest. So I just want to know, what's the story? So here's the tshuva of the Radbaz. Ani lo amin shenase davar kazeh bifnei talmid chacham v'shasa. I refuse to accept the report that someone offering incense to a shade that could have been done in front of a Talmud Chacham and he would remain silent. Ki hamakater lashedim lachabrim ulakabsum chayev misa. Anyone who offers incense to a shade, to shadim, in order to gather them together and harness their power, is chayev misa umisasu b'skila im hayu sham edim v'hasra. If he was warned in advance that this is asr and he does it anyway, he's chayev skila. He gets skila. He gets the death penalty because he's been over on a very serious iser deoraisa. Now, the non-beperk dalad misos based in, the Mishnah says in Sanhedrin that there's a Mishnah that says in Sanhedrin as follows. It says, the Torah prohibits ov and yidoni. Ov and yidoni are mentioned numerous times in the Torah. And the question is, what is the definition of ov and what is the definition of yidoni? There are two forms of idolatrous occult practices. So the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says that Baal ov zeh pitom hamedaber mishichyo, that this is a certain kind of spirit that speaks from a person's armpit. The yidoni hamedaber befiv. And yidoni is when you take a certain creature, like a little bird, and you put it in your mouth, and that causes speech to come out of, or bone of a bird, I should say, and you put it in your mouth, and it causes speech magically to channel to come out of your mouth. That's yidoni. Hare elu biskila. The Mishnah says that in both instances, if you channel this kind of occult practice, then you get skila. V'hanishal bahem, and if you don't actually put the bone in your mouth or do these practices, but you simply just say an incantation to ask the Ov being or the Yidoni being to give you guidance, that's an Isser Deraisa also, but you don't get Skila because you haven't done anything physical. And so therefore that's Ba'azhara. That's just, you get lashes or it's just a mitzvah lo saseh. I'm not sure if you get lashes for it, but it's a mitzvah lo saseh, but you don't get Skila. Uparach bigamara.
Is he referring to the one who's asking of someone who's practicing this? So
I don't think so. I think Ba'anishal Bahem means that you daven to Ov and Yidoni. You ask them, you ask the power of Ov, and you ask the power of Yidoni to help you. I think that's what it means.
So there's no isser on the person to seek out.
Not the word. The pasuk says you shouldn't go to an open yidoni.
Rashi says v'hanishal bahem is shabbat v'shol bahem lahagid lo davar ha'asid kagon Shaul. Like Shaul goes to a necromancer. So it could be your right laser. It could be that if a person seeks out Oven Yidoni, either by asking someone to do the practice for him, right? That sounds like what Rashi's saying because he compares it to what Shaul did. So that's a mitzvah lo saseh. Okay. So now the Gemara says we continue in the tshuva. The Gemara asks an interesting question. Parach the Gemara. Ma'ishna hacha dekatani bal ov v'yidoni, u'ma'ishna gabi krisos dekatani bal ov v'shir liyidoni. He says if you look in Maseches Krisos where it lists a whole list of things for which you get kares for, there it only says ov. It doesn't say ov and yidoni. And over here in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, it lists both ov and yidoni. That's the Gemara's question. Why over there does it say just ov? And over here it says ov and yidoni. Umasik Allah, the bal ov the katani b'krisus B'makater l'shed, demodu be'rabanan, answers the Gemara that, and this is after a long shakla v'tarya, that the reason why Ov is mentioned in Krisus is because Yid'oni, according to the Chachamim, you don't get Krisus for, because you're not doing a physical act. And only by Ov are you doing a physical act, and therefore you get Kares only for Ov and not for Yid'oni. Upirish Rashi, and so what is Ov doing? An Ov is a person who offers incense to a shade. Upirish Rashi zal shemakata lifnei hashed hamamuna al oso davar dahavi ma'aseh gamur. Rashi explains that what you're doing is you're offering incense to a shade who has certain influence over a certain thing that you want, whether it be wealth or good looks or whatever. You want a woman to fall in love with you, whatever it is, and you offer incense to that shade. So that's what's objectionable, and that's what gets you kares. Uparech amalei rava mekater l'shedim oved avodah zarahu. The Gemara then asks the question in Sanhedrin. It says, if you're telling me that the definition of Ov is someone who is offering incense to a shade, that's already listed in the list of krisus, because that's avodah zarah, that's idolatry. You're worshiping someone other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Pirish v'hakatani lahasam v'hedja. So ela amar rava v'makater l'chaber. So rather what it means is that you're offering incense l'chaber. So Pirush eno mekater l'shem elahus ela ayedei haktara naasef hakishuf l'chaber hashedim l'kan. The answer is that the offering of incense is not a form of worship, but rather it is a cause and reaction. What you're doing is you're burning incense to force these demonic forces to gather here, because apparently they have this certain reaction to a certain kind of incense. If you know what eye of newt and leg of spider, whatever those things are, and you know how to put them together and offer them as incense, like a witch's brew, and then you burn them properly, it forces the demons to come to you, and that's not avodah zarah, says the Gemara. That's not avodah zarah, that's knowing how to tap into certain invisible forces that exist in the world. So then the Gemara says, Amar le Abaye b'makater l'chaver chover chaverhu. So if that's what you're doing, then that also is listed in Maseches Krisus as one of the already listed in the Mishnah Krisus. That's called chover chaver. Pirush ve'eno elo b'lav. And furthermore, not that you're chayav krisus for that, but that it's only an isur lo sa'aseh. So it shouldn't be part of the list of things that you get kares for. U'mishani in haTorah amra chover zeh b'skila. And answers the Gemara, no. That in reality, if you are chover, if you summon demons and invoke them and force them to do your bidding, then you get skila for that. Pirush Rashi zal, me'achar shemechaber es hashedim b'mezid, amra Torah sheyehi b'skila. That by willfully forcing demons to do your bidding, by offering them incense, by offering up incense, causing them to sort of gravitate to the incense, the Torah says you get skila for that. And therefore you're chayiv kares, and you have to bring a carbon if you do it b'shogeg. So that's the end of the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Says the Radbaz, you see very clearly from that whole discussion, that if a person offers incense to Shedim to gather them or to group them together, or to force them to do his bidding, you see, that's the maskan of the Gemara. You get the death penalty for that because you're doing a practice of Ov. V'zelashon Baal HaNesivos. The Baal HaNesivos, I don't know who that is, because it's not the Nesivos HaMishpat, that's an Avraham. This is an earlier Nesivos. I don't know who he's referring to. And he says, HaMekater Lashed Havi Oived Avodas Kochavim. That if a person offers incense to a shade, that's tantamount to idolatry. Va'afilu Eno Mekater L'Shem Avodah Ela Lechaber Havi B'skila. And he says explicitly that you get skila for doing this. Because of Harama, this is the Rama Mipano, it's an early Rishon that the Radbaz is familiar with. He writes, "Demehashaminan dahamekatu l'shed l'chavru l'kufo la'asos ritzono chayiv mishum balov adkan ugedola mizukasav." And so the Rama writes even further, and he writes that Nashim Hamakatros es Habayis Be'esev Shemiriach Reach Tov, he says that if a woman uses incense to cause an odor to permeate the house, he quotes the Rashba as saying, Sha'asr, that's usr, using room deodorizer. To spritz in the house and to cause incense to permeate the house, even if you're doing it quite innocently, he says it's usr, mipnei sheniros kimekatros l'shed, because it has the appearance of offering incense as a form of witchcraft to these demons. Aval im osot lahasir reach ra mutar kan. But if the whole objective is you need to deodorize the house because there's an offensive odor, then it's permitted. So we've given Glade back their business. Ve'ein hefresh bein im haketoros hu reach tov o reach ra. It makes no difference whether the incense she is burning has a good smell or a bad smell. Kevin shehu osa kain lechaber ulekabetz shedim olachupo som she'asur ritzano hakol bichlal o v'chayiv skila v'hanishal bahem ba'azhara. And therefore, it makes no difference how you offer the incense. If you're doing it for the objective of causing a demon to do your bidding, then you're chayiv skila. And if you seek it out from a necromanceress, from some kind of witch, then you're being over on a mitzvah lo saseh. Lamadu mikan. So that's the Rama. So what Rabbi says we see from here, the dafka b'makatu lechaber sashedim hu bichlal bal ov, aval ha-mikater la'abriach hashedim me'olav nir'eh demutar. So he says, well, let's say the whole purpose of your burning the incense is not to attract demons, but rather to disperse demons. Demons be gone. And you have a certain recipe to get rid of demonic forces from your house. Say you think the house is haunted with Shedim, and you want to get rid of them. Burning incense in order to get rid of Shedim, he says that would be permitted, because you're not invoking them, you're not being machaber them, you're not bringing them close to you, you're chasing them away.
Is this the nature of the incense, or the kavanah of the burning?
No, I think it's the nature of the incense. I think it seems to be what he's saying.
The recipe.
How would anyone know if it works? You got the formula wrong and it doesn't work. Like not that I would do today, but in those days, how would they know if it works? Don't see them. I'm just saying that the whole thing.
I don't know.
You have to ask the right
formula doesn't work.
I guess things would get better in life. You know, you get the girl. You know, whatever. She falls for you.
I won't tell my wife.
Okay. Anyway, so Ba'af Bozeh, he says, Yirei Shamayim Yimna Atzmo. But even in that scenario, says the Radbaz, where you're offering incense in order to get rid of Shedim, you shouldn't do it. He says, Daman Muchach Im Hula Avriyachos Hamalachabram. He says, because from the external appearance, no one can tell. If you say, I'm burning incense for Shedim, no one can tell from the exterior, whether it's to gather them in or to chase them away. He says, and you can't tell by the smell. In other words, don't tell me, well, if it's an offensive smell, it's obviously to chase away the demons. No, because sometimes they use eye of newt to gather Newt Gingrich. Sometimes they use eye of newt or whatever they're going to use, the chazarai that the witches use. They use that foul-smelling stuff to gather the Shedim, not to chase them away.
Shedim as far as 10.
Right. V'lo gara minoshim hamekatros es habayis she'oser harash bazal v'bnei sheniros kemekatros l'shedim. And it's therefore no different from the Rashba. So Rashba says, bichlal, unless there's an offensive odor they need to get rid of, you're not supposed to burn incense in your home, because it looks like you're doing some kind of ceremony to attract Shedim. Aval liktoros habayis bilavona bizman hadever rachmana litzlan kemoshanu nohagim mutar. The ma'asav of mochichim is that when there's a plague, what they used to do is they felt that you could drive away the plague by burning certain kinds of herbs in order to, I guess, get rid of the bacteria or whatever was spreading the plague. That, he says, is permitted because then it's clear, it's indicated from the context that you're doing it for medicinal purposes. He says, you see from here that women who are very good intentioned and they burn incense in the shul, apparently that was a practice. The Radbaz says you should stop women from doing that, and certainly if they use frankincense, that I guess has a greater appearance of impropriety. You see from here that there are 3 types of incense that are burned for just in general. He says, if you burn incense in order to gather Shedim together to do your bidding, then you've done an Isser D'Oraisa for which the penalty is death. Lahavricham o liktoris habayis stam o hanoshim hamakamshas sahechol pater avol aser. Now, if you burn incense to get rid of Shedim, or stam to make the house or the shul smell nice, that is an Isser D'Rabbanan. It's not an Isser D'Oraisa, but you still shouldn't do it. And finally, lahakter lahavir reach ra o lahavir ifu sha'avir bizman hadever rachmana litzlan hareza mutar. But to burn incense to deodorize an offensive odor in the house, or to get rid of the stale air that could carry a plague with it, so that you're allowed to do even lechatchila. It's very subjective, and it all depends upon a person's intention when he's burning the incense.
This was part of the Christian rite at the time.
Well, the Catholics were burning incense all the time.
Yeah, sure. Eastern Orthodox too.
Well, he's living. Yeah, all right, that's true. Now, ule'inyan she'ela b'shedim. Now he says, let's talk about just seeking out Shedim. So let's say whether that means laser going to someone who knows Shedim, or who can summon Shedim, or you just saying incantations to invoke Shedim. He says, below kitter, without doing any kind of incense burning, yesh machlokas b'poskin. So here you get into a machlokas. Shaharama zal kosav de masa shedim harehu bichlal masa kashofim. The Rama Mipano is of the belief that this falls under the rubric of kishuf, which is an Isser D'Oraisa, of performing magic. V'chein kosvu ktsas meha poskin. And some of the poskim agree with the Rama. The Rosh, however, disagrees. The Rosh in a tshuva, and he writes, "Behavior midigarsina beperik arba misos amar Reb Ibo bar Nagri amar Reb Chia bar Abba," and he proves it from the following. This is a fascinating Gemara. We recently read Parshas Va'era, and we talk about the Machshafim. We talk about the sorcerers of Paro. And there's a discrepancy in the way that the Torah describes their witchcraft. How do you say their sorcery in Hebrew? So one pasuk says bilatehem, lametes, yud he mem, and another pasuk says bilahatehem, with a hey, an extra letter hey. So the Gemara picks up on this, and the Gemara says, what's the difference between the two? So bilatehem elo mahaseh shedim. The word bilatehem refers to demonic invocation, getting Shedim to do their work for you. The word lat, by the way, like Rashi says over there, means secretly. So what you're doing is that while it looks like you're doing the magic, balat, quietly, you're invoking a shade to perform the phenomenon that you want to be performed. And bilahatehem elu maaseh keshafim. That's referring to an actual magic that you are using, a force that you're tapping into yourself. And that's why the word lahat is a reference to the spinning sword, which was spinning outside of Gan Eden of its own power. So therefore the word lahat means that it's self-generating. Not that you're using an external power to cause the magic, but you're doing it from some kind of inner power that you have because you've learned magic. That's what the word lahatehem means. Amar Abaye, dekapid amana ma'aseh shedim, delokapid amana ma'aseh keshafim. And in a similar vein, Abaye says that if a sorcerer needs to use an instrument or some kind of object in order to perform the magic, then you know he's invoking shedim. And if he can do the magic without his magic wand, or without his magic hat, or without his magic whatever object, then you know he's doing magic that's within a power that is within him. But Amar Abaye, and this is the really mind blower. Abaye says Hilchos Keshafim Kehilchos Shabbos. This is all a Gemara in Sanhedrin. He says that the laws of Kishuf, the laws of the occult of magic, are just like Hilchos Shabbos. Yesh mehem beskila. V'yesh mehem pater aval aser, v'yesh mehem muter lechatchila. Some types of kishuf, if you do them, you get the death penalty. Some kinds of kishuf, if you do them, it's asur midrabanan, but there's no penalty. And there's a further kind of kishuf that's even mutter lechatchila. So what does this mean? So the Gemara clarifies. Ha'osa ma'asa b'skila. If you do an act like offering incense or other kind of physical act to do the act of kishuf, that's where you get skila. Ha'ochez es ha'inayim pater ahol aser. If you're an illusionist, right, like David Copperfield or these other guys, so you're doing an Isser D'Rabbanan because you're giving the impression that you're doing kishuf, and it's like a Marit Ayin, and therefore it's pater, it's an Isser D'Rabbanan, but you haven't done an Isser D'Oraisa. So you'll ask me a question, so is it mutter for a from a Yid to be a magician? Who was telling me? Your shver, your sister-in-law, your wife. Your wife. Oh, sorry. Yoshua Levi's wife is an illusionist. You see, I noticed I didn't say magician. She's an illusionist. Because the whole shaila is it permitted to perform illusions where it looks like you're doing magic, but you're really not. You're doing sleight of hand.
Everybody knows it's
Oh, so that's what the poskim speak out, that if everyone knows that it's sleight of hand and it's illusion, so it's not even an Isser D'Rabbanan. But a lot of poskim say that if you're a frum magician, you should announce at the beginning of your act, I want everyone to know that this is not real magic, but it's really, it's for entertainment purposes only. Okay. So, but here's the last part. What's mutter lechatchila? What kind of kishuv is mutter lechatchila? So zok the Gemara. K'der Rab Chanina v'Rav Hoshia. Dehavu asku kol male yoma deshabta b'sefer Yitzira. That these two great sages every Friday they would study Sefer Yetzirah, which means that they would use the different permutations of the Aleph phases described in the Book of Creation. We'll get to that in a minute. V'ivrula egla telisa'a v'achlila. And they were able to create yesh me'ayin. They were able to create a fatted calf every Friday, and they ate it for Shabbos. Which is a startling Gemara. Startling Gemara. The Kosav HaRosh Zal, so on that Gemara, the Rosh writes as follows. He says, Yera'eh kevin de Reb Chia bar Abba v'Abaya pirshu lanu mahim ma'aseh shedim u'mahim ma'aseh keshafim shedaita maskeves shema'aseh shedim enu bichlal keshafim u'mutarim. The Rosh writes on that Gemara, he says, it would seem to me that the fact that the Gemara distinguishes between kishuf and masa shedim, one is la tehem and one is laha tehem, so you see that one is asur and one is mutter. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of the Gemara distinguishing between the two? Ve'heim bichlal uvda de Rab Chanina v'Rav Hoshia. And that's why, at the end of the Gemara, Rav Chanina and Rav Hoshia use the power of shedim to create a fatted calf every Erev Shabbos. The imais shedim aser kamasik shafim my nafkamina b'mesha pirshu mahim mas shedim mahim mas shafim akan. Because otherwise, what would be the point of telling me when something is kishuf and when something is mas shedim? What difference would it make if they're both aser? So concludes the Rosh that it must be that mas shedim is mutter, that a person is allowed to invoke shedim to do his bidding. Yeah.
Can't you just say the Sefer Yetzirah is neither?
What?
Can't you just say the Sefer Yetzirah is neither shade nor it could be a third level of it? That's what I would have guessed.
It could be, but then why does the Gemara bring it as a citation? The Gemara starts off by saying there are three different kinds of kishuf. But as we'll see, what you're suggesting, Sid, is not far off from the mark of what the Radbaz is going to come out with.
Which Rav Chanina was this?
Rabbi Chanina, probably the same Rabbi is, I believe it's an Amora, this Rabbi Chanina, but I'm not sure. It sounds to me like it's an Amora based on the context. Okay, so that's what we're going to have to, we won't be able to go through the whole Shuvah. The Radbaz says, I disagree with the Rosh. I disagree with the Rosh. The Rosh is saying that these two great Amoraim, Rabbi Chanina, Rav Hoshia, every Erev Shabbos would create a fatted calf using shedim. How could you even suggest that two holy Yidden, two great sages of the Talmud, would invoke the power of shedim, even if it's permitted? doesn't mean that it's recommended. It doesn't mean that it's something that we would expect of holy people to do, to tap into Shedim forces, to do their bidding. And therefore, the Rabbi concludes, like Sid was saying, is that that this is not when they use Sefer Yetzirah, this term kshafim is a generic term. It means tapping into supernatural forces. And that which is permitted lechatchila is only when you tap into angelic forces because you know Sefer Yetzirah, you know how to tap into certain, what we would call, I guess, like white magic, using the shemos of Hashem, and you have to, like the Ramchal writes in Derech Hashem, you have to be very, very prepared spiritually and literally, from a literary point of view, to know exactly what you're doing. And if you're not, so then you're doing something inappropriate. Okay. And let me just skip to get to the relevant part. Let's turn the page. I want to do the last two paragraphs. The last two paragraphs is first where he quotes Shuv Matzasi Ba Meiri. I says I also found that the Meiri writes Shekasav Zal. Now the Meiri, although he lived closer to where the Hasidei Ashkenaz lived, because he was in France, he was a part of the Rambam's rationalist school. He was very Maimonidean in a lot of his thinking. So he writes, Shuv Matzasi B'Amir Kasav Zal ve'elo shema'aminim b'metzias hashedim u'puloseim asr lahem lishol bahem af b'chol. That the Meiri writes that those people who believe in Shedim and their effects, those people are not allowed to invoke Shedim neither on Shabbos nor during the week. Now, previously the Rabbi had quoted another Gemara which says that you're not allowed to invoke Shedim on Shabbos, but during the weekday you are. And then Rabbi Yossi says you can't even invoke Shedim during the week because they're a sakana. So the Rabbi just points out that there are two different classes of Shedim. There are Shedim that are well known to people, and those are what we would call friendly Shedim, where you know that by using certain incantational powers that you may have been passed down to you from some esoteric tradition, you have the ability to harness them without them injuring you. And there are other kinds of Shedim, which is sort of like only the wild guys dabble with those Shedim. You got to live on the wild side to dabble with a shade that has not been tested. So the example that the Gemara gives when it talks about the tame Shedim, they call them Sarei Shemen and Sarei Beitzim. They call them the demonic forces that linger around oil and eggs. Those are the demons that are well known, and those are the ones that don't pose a danger because they've been tested, and they can have an effect if you invoke them properly without, and again, the Radbaz qualifies it, without actually offering incense, but just invoking some kind of incantation. You're allowed to invoke them, and the Gemara explains that the way the Rosh explains, the reason why a person would do this is if something was stolen from you, and you wanted to know who the ganef was, you could invoke a shade to reveal to you the identity of the ganef, or a lost object, so that you could find the object that was lost or stolen. So that, he says, is permitted to do as well. But you have to know that the shade is not going to present you with a sakana. And so he writes, the Meiri writes that he says those people who believe in Shedim, they're not allowed to seek them out even during the weekday. V'yesh lahater b'sari shemen b'sari beitzim. You could permit the certain species of shade that are known as the demons of oil and eggs, ela she'enam ela divrei havoy. But he says, I want you to know that Shedim is a bunch of baloney. It's just a bunch of nonsense. The hagirsa lefi da'azu ela shemichazvin. And according to that opinion that says that Shedim are nonsense, is that the reason why a person should not seek them out, Shedim at all, is because shemichazvin, is because it's all a lie. The Gedolei Aposkim Gors Mipnei Shemichazvin. That Ela Shemichazvin means that the Shedim lie. Shedim don't tell the truth. Shedim are notorious for being mischievous little critters, and even if you seek them out, they will lie to you. But he says, but I subscribe to the Rambam, who says not that Ela Shemichazvin, but rather Mipnei Shemichazvin, which means because they're utter nonsense. and there's no power to them whatsoever. And a person should not be drawn after nonsense and sheker, and that's the main opinion. Okay, fine.
That if the Torah is telling us, never mind if it's nonsense or not, never mind it's havalim. It's havalim, but you're not allowed to do it. Avodah Zarah, we understand it's havalim, but still, we're not allowed to do so. We're not allowed to participate in this. I mean, according to the Meiri, I don't understand.
When a person is Oved Avodah Zarah, they are turning away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and turning to some other force. When a person is invoking the power of a shade, apparently that's not Avodah Zarah, because he's not worshiping another force. He acknowledges that I daven to Hashem, I daven 3 times a day with a minyan. Right? But I happen to know that just like when I turn on a switch on the wall, the light turns on, so too, when I do certain things, I can cause powers to change in the world. That's not Avodah Zarah. That's not turning away from Hashem.
But according to the Meiri, that it's havalim, and therefore there is no prohibition.
He doesn't say that about Avodah Zarah.
No, I'm saying, but because it's havalim and therefore it's mutar, so...
No. He doesn't say it's mutar.
He
says the reason why that a person shouldn't do it is because shehem mechazvim. In other words, it's mutar to seek out sarei beitzim and sarei shemen, but ella mipnei shemechazvim. But you shouldn't do it because they're not going to help you, because there is no such thing as shedim. That's the context of the. You have to look at the Gemara. Where is the Gemara? I have it quoted for you earlier. I think it's the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Yes, it's source number 5. It's Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, right? And that Tana Rabbanan Sarei Shemen and Sarei Beitzim Mutar Lishol Bahen Ella Mipnei Shemechazvin. Rashi says Lakach Nimnu Milishol Bahen. That's why people don't seek out Shedim, because they're mechazvim. So there's 2 ways to understand mechazvim. Rashi understands mechazvim means that they lie. And the Rambam and the Meiri understand because there's nothing to them. They're absolute falsehood. Let me just finish off this last paragraph of the Radbaz. Haklal olem midevarai elu sha'olin she'olin de'ishano ketoris ein derech lahatirim klal v'osakin chayiv misa. Finally, my psak is that if a person offers incense to a shade, he's chayiv misa. There's no heter at all. V'hanishal bazar, and if a person seeks out shadim by seeking out someone else who can do some kind of performance for him, or if he says he seeks out a shade incantationally, then that's the mitzvah lo saseh. He's violating mitzvah lo saseh. V'afilu shaloi de ketoris ein mutar ela sarei shemen v'sarei beitzim v'sarei bohan al yidei hashemos hakodesh. And then even using the friendly shadim, the ones that do not pose a risk to a person, those are only permitted using Hashbo Hashemos HaKodesh, using certain incantations of Hashem. The Yirei Shamayim Yisrachek Afilu Mizeh. But a God-fearing person should not do that either. Kevin Shu Machlokis B'Davar She'Yeshemetz Avodah Zarah She'Yovel L'Mosheich Achareihem V'Anir L'Niyas Daiti Kasafti. But a person still should not do that because it could lead to Avodah Zarah. It smacks of Avodah Zarah because you're sort of tapping into a force other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The last 2 lines are also quite interesting. He says, V'lo tachshedeini mipnei shekasafi loshan ha'meiri shani machrish metzius hashedim. Don't suspect me, says the Radbaz, that I am a rationalist just because I quoted for you the language of the Meiri. I quoted for you the language of the Meiri to show that the Meiri holds that there are 2 classes of Shedim that just as I have suggested. Ki ani ma'amin b'chol divrei Chazal afilu sicha kala shelahem. Because I believe in the words of Chazal, even the lightest of their conversations. Kol sheken shaksuvim pishteihem larim al metziutam v'lo yizbechod es odes ivcheim lasi'irim yizbechu lashedim v'goymer. And certainly that's true when the pasuk itself is indicative of the existence of Shedim, as the pasuk that we started off the evening as V'lo yizbechu odes ivcheim lasi'irim. Lasi'irim means to the Shedim. Yes?
Yeah, it's blasphemy. I'm sure about all this, but how much of this, aside from the fact that the morality of the situation, that we have objects other than God that can punish us, that can hurt us, that can harm us, I mean, that to me is completely distant from Jewish morality.
Well, if you recall, we quoted a Zohar last week that asked the question, what's the function of Shedim in the world? Why would Hashem allow them to exist? And the Zohar said that Hashem created them so that they could punish the wicked. So you have to know, just like you know that you shouldn't, you shouldn't walk into a vat of acid. If you see acid in front of you, don't jump in the acid and go for a swim. Don't walk into if you see a beehive in front of you, don't walk and start playing with the beehive. Similarly, don't walk over where you know there's Shedim there and start playing around. Don't seal off the window. If you know the Shedim, you're going to start annoying the Shedim.
I have a lot of trouble with that. I must say that. I have trouble with all. But how much of this, I mean, I guess this is against the last paragraph and so on, that we believe everything we thought. How much of this was an inability of people in the Middle Ages to understand physical phenomena that we understand today, and to provide explanations of it in the form of Shedim, some magical incantation? So the sorry Shemin, what were they? The bacteria of the Shemin? They didn't understand what bacteria were in those days. They didn't understand laws of physics. How much of this was just a reflection of trying to explain nature that they didn't understand at that time?
All right, so there are two traditions, there are two approaches to this question, which is an extremely legitimate question. The two approaches are as follows: that our great Gedolei Yisrael throughout the ages, throughout the Middle Ages, up until the modern age, were simply not aware of modern science and medicine, and as a result mistook certain phenomena for being spiritual in nature when there was really a very rational physical explanation for them. And therefore, like the Rambam and the Meiri say, it's all nonsense, it's all superstition. There's another approach that we also spoke out, and that says that no, that the existence of Shedim is real. If we don't experience Shedim as much as we did in the olden days, it's because we live in a much more scientific world. And as a result, we've placed on blinders, and the Shedim have been banished, or however you're going to explain it, the Shedim's power in the modern world has been diminished. So, you choose how you choose to believe. Let me make sure that you all understand that belief in Shedim is not one of the 13 principles of faith. Right? So if that helps you in any way.
In either school, we say that it's significant. In either school, the view is that it's the evidence at this point, that whatever exists is very minor today.
Yes, but. Well, one of the valuable, I think, things that we can extract from this Radbaz and from the Meiri is that there are different species of Shedim. There are different gradations of Shedim. There's the friendly Shedim, there's the not-so-friendly Shedim. There's the hazardous Shedim, and there's the Shedim that you can harness. And it may be true in Halacha as well. We demonstrated a stira last week in Shulchan Aruch, which seemed one sif in Shulchan Aruch seemed to say that we're allowed to be Machal Shabbos if someone has a Ruach Ra pursuing them. And another sif in Shulchan Aruch says we're not allowed to be Machal Shabbos. And it seems like there are different levels of Ruach Ra. There seem to be different levels of Shedim. And I don't have clarity on when we can apply a b'diavad l'chatchila situation when we can't. I simply don't have enough understanding of this topic, and I don't know who to turn to be able to get guidance on this matter. When it comes to, if someone says, Rabbi, I'm renovating my house, and I plan to, add on another room to the house, and that requires me to put in a wall where there was an outside wall with a window, I'm just going to put up a dividing wall. I'm sealing off the window. So the question is, how would I advise that person? I would tell them about the tzava of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, and I would show them that Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid's language is, he says it's mamish sakana, if you don't drill a hole in the place where that window was. But I will also say that you, my dear friend, are a mature adult. It is within your right to decide whether you want to obey this tzava of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid or not. I don't feel that I can impose my psak in an area of which I don't claim any understanding of to begin with. So.
Then the person would say, Rabbi, what would you do? And then you'd be in trouble.
Yeah. The truth is, I have to tell you that as much as I'd like to profess being a rationalist, there's like a friend of mine once told me, never make fun of someone who could turn you into a frog. And the truth is, I don't like to tempt even demonic forces that I don't believe in. And I might be tempted to drill a hole. Just, tell the contractor, drill a hole in the wall, we'll put a little picture frame over it or something, we'll decorate it, we'll make it nice, But let's not tempt fate. I don't know what I would do.
You chose to.
Where does the dibuk fall? Is that totally different? Or?
A dibuk is different. It's in the same realm of these spiritual forces that you have to be careful about. But a dibuk is literally, it means a neshama that has been placed in exile. And instead of being allowed to go back into a new body and have a regular Gilgul, it's forced to occupy a body that already has a neshama in it. And therefore you can sometimes have one body that is being sort of possessed by another neshama that through its averos was forced to possess another body temporarily. Yeah, it is a different realm, but the Chafetz Chaim was known to have exercised the dibuk. And so, who am I to say? Rabbi Chanan Wasserman testified about it. So this is already in the 20th century. So who am I to say that whether or not dibuks are real or not? Who am I to say?
Who is the author of Shemiras Haguf?
Shemiras Haguf HaNefesh is, I think it's Halperin, but I'm not 100% sure. It's Rabbi Perlow, I think is the name. It's either Perlow or Halperin, I don't remember the name. But it's a 2-volume set, Shemiras Haguf HaNefesh. It's all over the place. You can very easily find it. You call any Sfarim store, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, have a good night, everyone.